Dior. So it's been like a year since you started training, right? And
Yeah.
you've made great progress. Like it's been unbelievable to
Yeah.
watch. And I think that your journey can really inspire a lot of young women who might be going through some similar stuff. Like you had some hormonal issues, weight gain. So what I really want to do is like paint the picture. So let's start off with when you were in high school from ages like 12, 13 to 18. Like what did you look like? How did you feel? Were you overweight? Were you healthy? Like were you active? Talk a little bit about that.
So I was a gymnast for a really long time. So in high school, I was super active, and I was also super skinny, not having to focus on anything because really like I was doing competitive gymnastics. So all throughout high school, I would eat whatever and just go and train and not have a routine aspect or have anything to focus on except going to train and then just eating whatever to maintain that. But then obviously stopping gymnastics, coming out of high school.
You took all that activity away, still ate the same, but now you're also becoming a woman.
Right, and
Yeah.
things are changing. So for me, I did not know the things I know now. So looking back, I actually was just going with the flow, and my body was actually changing so much, and everything I was doing was actually reversing what I really needed to focus on.
Right. So when did you first get your period and then when did you go on the pill?
I got my period when I was 14, and if I remember correctly, I probably had 1 or 2 periods and then went on the pill because that's just what people were doing.
Yes.
I don't think I regulated myself at all or had a regular menstrual cycle before going on the pill, and I think if I look back, that's probably one thing that I should have fixed, but obviously I didn't know.
Yeah, you didn't know. And a lot of people don't know. And you go to the doctor's office and they're just like, well, this is what you do. You're young and you have a boyfriend. You should go on the pill.
Yeah.
Like going on the pill is better than becoming pregnant.
Yes.
That's what they kind of tell you, right?
Yeah.
So you started taking the pill when you were 15. So then like no periods, like completely took it away. You weren't bleeding at all.
No, I did get periods every month, then was on the pill for 7 years.
Yeah.
And then
what
the
was
only reason I stopped the pill was because it was around during COVID, so it was really hard to get doctor's appointments, and you could only go to the doctor if it was like an emergency. So I was super irregular with taking my pills, and then all of a sudden, since I couldn't get a doctor's appointment, I just was like, you know what, maybe I don't need to take them, so I'm just gonna go off of it. And then once I was off of it, I did get my period for 2 months. I was like regular, and then all of a sudden, I was starting to feel all these changes in my body, and I lost my period.
And
then,
I think this is about like the time that we met. Like it was maybe like 6 months after that.
Yes, exactly.
So before we're going to talk more about like your menstrual cycle, your period, everything that you went through with that. But let's talk a little bit about like, okay, so now you go off the pill, no period, like no bleeding, loss of the period completely. What shape were you in at this point? And what were you doing from like an activity level standpoint?
I was super inflamed, and I think I noticed it around my face and my legs, and I just was exhausted all the time.
Just not feeling optimal.
No, and I would always just like self-diagnose and just say like, well, it's COVID, so I should feel this way because we haven't been as active as usual. And I just felt super inflamed in my own skin, and I did not feel comfortable.
That was never an issue when you were growing up, right?
No, I never thought of it.
Never even thought of it, and you ate whatever the hell you wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're active, and that's an issue. Like not an issue, but something we see so much in women, right? Is when you're young, you're active, you're eating a certain way, you're still growing, so you're like skinny and small, and then like you don't change anything except for maybe like removing that activity because now you're an adult and you get more sedentary and maybe you're not playing sports. So now there's like this extra weight gain, this like not feeling comfortable in your skin, and it's like you don't know what to do because what you were always doing had you looking the way that you're comfortable in. So,
and I obviously didn't have the knowledge that I do today.
Yeah.
So I would have never known that there was an issue.
And so at this point, you were working out, you're doing more group fitness style like
I was
training?
doing classes, high intensity classes, and the spin bike. And I thought like, okay, the more I sweat and the more intense I did everything, like that was the best thing for me.
Yeah.
And me not
You
having
didn't know, right?
Yeah.
And you probably saw stuff on Instagram, and like that's the unfortunate thing about the fitness industry these days is it's very like male dominated. So for a lot of men, well, pretty much for all men, eat less and do more works really well, right? But for women, it's actually almost the opposite. It's almost like eat more and do less.
Yeah, and I was like waiting to eat all day.
Yeah.
And then I'd be like, okay, I had a great lunch and a good dinner. Like I don't need breakfast. Or I would skip lunch because I'm like, oh no, I'm just gonna have a really good dinner and that will be fine. Because I thought, oh, my body's gonna know that it doesn't need that much food, so that's how I'm gonna lose the weight.
But at this point,
It wasn't about losing the weight, it was about the way I felt. Like I just felt so off.
Yeah.
And I had no idea about what was to come, and like the PCOS diagnosis, I had no knowledge of that at all.
Yeah, so this is actually pretty much where we met, because I remember when you came in for your assessment, I think you came in, I was looking at it the other day, the first time you stepped on my scale, you were like 152 pounds.
Yeah.
But you had told me that you had seen 164.
Yeah.
And you pretty much lost that weight.
Yeah.
So you came in like 10 pounds lighter by walking on the treadmill on an incline for like 45 minutes a day.
Right, and that seemed like the thing to do was just walking, so I think I nailed that part.
Yeah.
That was the one right thing I probably did.
Yeah, on your own, yeah.
But,
so then, so we started together, and like you were kind of like reiterating some of these things that you just told me, how you're not comfortable in your own skin, like how you're just not feeling great, like you put on weight. Just like felt like almost like this body wasn't yours. And then we talked a little bit about how you hadn't gotten your period back yet. And I was pretty much like right away out of the gates, I said, well, let's improve your health.
Yeah.
Let's improve your insulin sensitivity. Let's improve all aspects of your health and your lifestyle. And I would bet that it's going to come back.
Yeah. But I went to the doctor and they said, you have PCOS. You need to go back on the pill to prevent cancer.
And they said you need to go back on birth control medication if you ever want to have kids one day.
Yes. And I was like, okay, but what is the alternative? Because like I also had some other skin issues like eczema that I just couldn't get rid of. But all of a sudden, once I was off the pill, I noticed that went away of all things. And that was, for me, I was like, okay, but like, what if I don't want to go back on the pill?
Yeah.
And they said, well, there's really no other option.
Right.
So then I felt super defeated. I thought it was just like a diagnosis and I'm just gonna have to live with that.
Yeah.
And worry about if I'm gonna have kids one day.
Yeah, which is crazy. Like it's a crazy situation. And so what I said to Dior when we were in that situation is I pretty much said, listen, I'm not a doctor. I can't tell you to take prescription medication. I can't tell you to not take prescription medication. But my opinion of what I would do if I was in your shoes is, so your doctor gave you that opinion. She gave you her professional opinion as a medical professional, right?
Yeah.
You're about to start this 12-week program where we're going to focus on improving all assets of your health. And that's what we do here at Virtue, right? It's like lifestyle, nutrition, supplementation, training. It's full encompassing 360 approach, right? So what I pretty much said is like, what do you have to lose?
Right.
Like, let's try this.
Like, give me 12 weeks.
Yeah, I said, give me 12 weeks. Give us 12 weeks. Give this 12 weeks. Worst case, the 12 weeks is done. You don't get your period back. You still find yourself in the same position. Then you can go. Like 12 weeks isn't going to make a big difference in terms of like what the diagnosis that your doctor was making. But 12 weeks could make all the difference in improving your health to get you a point where you don't have to follow through with those recommendations that she was giving you. So Dior pretty much bought in completely, right? And the amazing part about Dior's transformation and Dior's whole story is that you see all like before and afters on Instagram, right? And we're big on those. Like we're putting those out there. It's awesome to see the body transformation. But the goal when Dior came in wasn't to, the goal when anybody comes in. It wasn't
about the picture.
No, it wasn't about the
after.
picture. It was about your health.
Yes,
it was about like, okay, I'm trying to get Dior's period back and improving her health, getting you to lose body fat, getting you to have a better relationship with food, more frequent meals, improving your sleep, doing all of these things. Like I was very confident that we were going to be able to turn the ship around, right? Without making you have to go back on prescription medication. Because prescription medication, it's like, how many people do you know that take antidepressants and are still depressed, right? Like it's a lot, right? So, and I'm not saying like there's a time and a place for all those things, but in a lot of situations, it's a Band-Aid. It's not addressing the root cause.
Right.
Where I thought the root cause was your metabolic health. It was
Yeah.
just your health in general. And if we improve the health of your vessel, like your body, all of those situations are going to improve.
Yeah.
So then we're sitting at like the last, it was literally,
It was
your last session, right?
Our last session, I got my period back.
Yeah, you came in.
And I was honestly like, if this is not a sign, like how crazy is it to like have it the last day of our 12 weeks, get my period back. And it was like this huge thing.
Yeah.
I'm so happy.
But that, like, it just goes to show you like what happens when you trust the process and like you fully commit and you just buy in.
Yeah.
Like you could have just been like, oh, Andrew's not a doctor. My doctor told me to do this. I'm going on back on the pill, right?
Yeah.
And who knows where you would have been now with that situation, right? And that's important to say. But so pretty much after that 12 weeks, you got your period back.
Yeah.
It was still pretty irregular for a little bit, but we got it back, right? So that's showing like, okay, well, what we're doing is working. Let's keep on at this. And now we're sitting at a year later. Your period's pretty much back to fully regular now, right?
Yes.
Like you're getting it every like 30 days, 32 days or something like that. And so before she started with me, that like, she lost that first 10 pounds. So you were at 164 back then. Yeah. And now you're sitting at 134 pounds a year later. Yeah. So we dropped 30 pounds, okay, of body fat, more than 30 pounds of body fat because you increase muscle too, right? Like you look like a completely different person. You're confident, all of these different things, and you're doing great in the gym. So, but the goal was never that. Like obviously it's going to be a byproduct of improving your health.
Which,
but
kind of like completed the whole circle of like me getting my health journey back, like made me realize that I would actually feel confident, because that was the part I wasn't worried about. Like I knew eventually I would feel confident, but like I feel like it all just came together once like I knew that my health was feeling really good.
Yeah. So, and I think it's just like, it's such an inspiring story, because I think a lot of times people will look at some of our transformations and they'll be like, oh, like I can never look like that or whatever. And then, or maybe people have even had like the experience that you had where they're trying to get like forced prescription medication to put a Band-Aid on an issue, right? And they're like, oh, well, I have PCOS. And I even have to remind you sometimes too, right? Like even now when you're like, oh, well, this would be really good for my PCOS. And I'm like, Dior, you don't have PCOS anymore.
Right.
We reversed that. You need to stop identifying as somebody who has PCOS, because like your mind is super powerful, right? Yeah. So if you walk in and you're like, I don't have PCOS, I reversed that, I'm fertile and I have a regular period, like your body, that's like we become our thoughts, right? Whereas so it's just been so amazing to see that transition. And I think it can just be so inspiring, because like PCOS, I know so many people with PCOS, like people are always reaching out saying, I have PCOS, I have hormone problems, whatever, right? And like, obviously there's gonna be like underlying issues and there could be some specific things causing whatever, but it's like some people have like the saying in like the strength and conditioning realm that like strength is never a weakness. So if you're like working with an athlete or something, like it's never going to be a bad thing to get someone stronger. They're always going to be able to perform better.
Yes.
So with all of these issues, like people reach out all the time and are like, oh, do you have experience like specializing in PCOS, or do you have an experience specializing in hormones, or like all of these different things? And I always say like, yes, 100%. But like when they come in, I'm not saying it's like a rinse and repeat.
No.
But the goal is always like, if we improve the health, it's the same thing as like getting stronger is never a weakness. Like getting healthier, losing body fat, improving your lifestyle, improving your sleep, improving your relationship with food, improving your training, those things are never going to have a negative effect, right? And I think you're just like a walking example of that.
Yeah, and I also think that knowledge is like a huge thing. Like the amount of things that I've learned from you guys is like crazy. Like I didn't know that, like, okay, you have PCOS. Well, there's actually many types, like post-pill PCOS, or maybe it's genetic. So
it could be like a hormone imbalance with too much testosterone. It could be like an insulin issue, which I suspected was for you, right?
I think it was an insulin for me, and now like I know a bunch of things about all the supplements that I should be taking, like specifically for me and what I'm experiencing. But like I always like to focus on the knowledge I've learned, because
because
I think that's like the
biggest
thing, or the biggest takeaway.
Yeah, well, because like if you get a job somewhere else and you move to Calgary and you're not able to train with me in person anymore, it's like all of this knowledge that you gained from the last year of us together, you know, like that's never going away. That's always in your back pocket. So you're never going to regress, because really that situation where you were young, and then you got older and like we're putting on weight and all these things. It was just like a knowledge problem. It was just you didn't know what to do because you never had to think about it before.
Yeah.
But so now you know how to make all the changes that we made sustainable and long lasting, right?
Yeah.
So I just think like for a main takeaway, like if you're struggling with PCOS, like whatever the issue is, like there's always light at the end of the tunnel. And like Dior's whole transformation is just a perfect example of that. And like even just talking about the body transformation, it's like we didn't make that the goal. We didn't make that the priority. But you lost 30 pounds and you pretty much had to give away all your old clothes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like it's just like you need, but none of this wouldn't have happened if you didn't like fully trust in the process and fully commit yourself to it, right? So it's just, I'm really proud of you. It's been amazing to watch.